This week on MS Refresh. While we were gone, it seems Microsoft Viva has continued its domination on the Risk board. And even though Ignite is imminent, there's a surprising number of updates due this month to cover. All that and more. Subscribe to stay in the know. This is the MS Refresh Show. Hi there, and welcome to the Matt and Sean 365 Refresh Show. This is episode 71 for the work week of October 3rd, 2022, and this month's roadmap recap. Coming to you from the West Coast, my name is Sean Bugler.
And from the East Coast, my name is Matt Wade.
Matt Wade, I am so excited to see you. How was Oktoberfest?
Oh, it was good. How was your month off?
It was exactly what I needed. I did almost nothing from I call it my extracurriculars.
Yes.
All I did is I just went to work. I went out to drink with friends. But no, you didn't get me one.
It's in the mail.
It was awesome. Yeah. No work personal stuff. Obviously we've got the podcast and occasionally I write a blog or two. None of that. And it was exactly what I needed. I feel refreshed. I feel renewed. I feel like I need to talk about technology again, which is awesome.
Yeah. So mine was equally awesome. I did, some stuff in the beginning half of the September, but then went to Germany and Denmark. I had just a phenomenal experience. I got to meet Sven, my co-author on the book. We had a couple.
Correct me, you guys have not met in person before.
Nope, not met in person.
And so you guys wrote a couple together.
Copies that are signed by both of us. Very expensive, by the way. Going on
limited edition.
Get that copy. So many thanks to Sven for the travel tips, the planning, the phrase book, all the coverage of what to say, when and where, and did Oktoberfest with Patrick Fieninger, who is another Microsoft roadmap guy and does his own podcast. If you want something short and sweet, which is not this video or vodcast,
as much as we try to,
his is like 5 minutes long every week, and it's fantastic. But he hosted me and my fiance and our travel partners at Oktoberfest. So
I'm sorry. What did you say?
I said fiance this time. That's
fiance.
Yes.
What?
Got engaged over the course of this vacation too. So it was
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun. We had an awesome time at Oktoberfest. Fun fact: there's only one Oktoberfest. I did not know that until I was starting to plan this. There are lots of Volksfests. But only one Oktoberfest, and it's in Munich, and it's in September. And that was a ball. It was really, really, really fun. We all dressed up. We got our lederhosen and our dirndls and went full out. And it's a good thing too, because everybody else was dressed up. You would definitely stick out if you did not wear the traditional clothing. Then Patrick hosted us for breakfast the next morning. And again, another LinkedIn connection of mine in the M365 world, and just such an amazing host. And he treated us to the traditional Bavarian breakfast, which is Weisswurst. I forget what the word for breakfast is in German, but it's a traditional thing of white sausage, a certain specific brand of mustard, Weiss beer, and a couple other sides. And if you don't have all of it together, it doesn't count. And at least not in the Bavarian line.
Gatekeeping.
Yeah, well,
in both Germany and Bavaria here.
I was going to say leave it to Bavaria specifically. They are very proud people.
I respect it.
Yeah, it was great. We drove through Austria to between two places in Germany on our trip to knock another country out, but grabbed lunch in Innsbruck and then flew to Denmark and met up with my business partner, Niels, and his family. They hosted us for a few days outside of Copenhagen, and we had just a fantastic, everybody was just awesome. And the community aspect of this, I know I can sometimes come off as cynical, but the people that I have met in the Microsoft 365 world are amazing. And it was just an absolute blast. And we got engaged in Denmark on the seaside.
That's Awesome. Yeah, and I got a chance to see the photos, and it looked very picturesque.
Hey, if you know Cape Cod in Massachusetts, the Baltic Sea side of Denmark is like a carbon copy.
Really?
It's weird just how similar it is.
That's so interesting. That's kind of how they describe the Northern California area is very Mediterranean, and
which is why they use it in all the movies, right? Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Right, exactly.
Well, seriously, congratulations. I'm
Thanks.
so excited for you, and I'm really glad you got a chance to get out there, because I agree. I think it's a good reminder of kind of why we do this thing. Like, obviously, like we care about this stuff for our jobs, but the community component of this universe is unmatched. And it's, that shows itself in so many different ways. And so I'm really glad that you had the opportunity to experience that firsthand this past month.
Yeah, it was awesome. Also, while we were gone, this channel broke 25,000 subscribers.
Hey! Ow, the balloons didn't fall.
I know, but hey, I thought that was pretty cool too.
That's exciting. Yeah,
20. A lot of stuff happened in September.
I had my birthday was in September.
Ooh, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. That was probably the most notable thing.
All right. Nice. Okay, well, we got a lot to cover, so it's probably worth hitting off and jumping into the news, huh?
Let's do it.
This is the news.
Hello there. It's been a while. Let's kick things off with OneDrive. Coming this month to OneDrive, the new sharing experience is expected to drop, which updates the share menu to provide access to more share options, as well as updating the manage access experience so it's not such a nightmare for people to change or remove access. The activity column is also coming to the My Files page in OneDrive in the browser, and Known Folder Move, also known as KFM, is finally coming to macOS, allowing you to redirect, or more likely for your admins to redirect, the desktop, documents, and pictures folders to OneDrive, as opposed to those being two separate destinations on your computer. On the SharePoint front, not much SharePoint news, and that's likely because Ignite is just around the corner. For those of you that don't know, Microsoft Ignite is typically Microsoft's biggest conference of the year. It's where they hide a lot of their news that then eventually shows up 2 years from then. But here is one that stood out. GCC High, that's Government Community Cloud, and GCC DoD, Department of Defense, will finally get frequent and recent site listings in the SharePoint app bar and SharePoint start page. Imagine the start page in the app bar without that information. You're correct. It makes it mostly useless. So, thank you for serving our country. You're welcome. Jumping over to Outlook. Coming to Outlook this month, the Cloud Signature, which should make your signature consistent across Outlook for the web and Outlook for Windows, is due, though the listing states that it was delayed and will only be available in the beta channel. We're not sure if that means they forgot to update this or what, but at least you know they're thinking about it. Viva Insights is taking the Teams quiet time concept and expanding it to Outlook so you can suppress notifications outside of work time. Reactions are apparently still coming for Outlook on iOS, Android, and Mac, but have they even made it to Outlook for the web and Windows? Because I feel like I'm still just seeing the thumbs up icon. And the modern attachment concept is rolling out, where a linked file in an email will be a link in the body rather than displayed as a cloud attachment. For more information on that, you can check out previous episodes where Matt and I vehemently disagree about whether that's a good thing or not. I think it is.
Boo.
Bookings. Coming this month to Microsoft Bookings. The ability to use a custom web domain for your bookings calendars, which was sneakily added just a few days ago, is apparently en route. That's exciting. Support for bookings appointments when multiple staff members are available, and you will be able to control calendar names with custom prefixes and suffixes, as well as blocked words, much as you are able to do with Teams channel names. Fun. Coming this month to Excel, the ability to use @mentions and comments to assign and track tasks, just like in Word and PowerPoint, something I've been asking for many, many months. The ability to create, edit, and run Office scripts in Excel for Windows, formerly only available in Excel for the web, is also on the way. Just another nail in the coffin for not Visual Studio, Damn it. Matt, what's the old one?
VBA macros.
Thank you. I've blocked it out. I taught this stuff. Coming this month to Microsoft Project, sprints and backlogs in Project for the Web. That wasn't there? I digress. People View for Project for the Web for better enterprise resource planning. These are only for commercial and GCC, the government community cloud. Project Online and for the Web have yet to show their face in either GCC High or DoD. Who knows if he'll ever get there, because we have Planner coming this month to Microsoft Planner. Rich text in the Planner task notes, grid view of the assigned to me view, and it looks like recurring tasks have been delayed again. Will it actually show up in October? Maybe they're just holding on to it until Ignite so they can announce it as a brand new feature. Coming over to Microsoft Stream, the fully revamped iOS and Android Stream apps are on the docket. The ability to upload and share files directly from the Stream web app. We are getting closer, people. And GCC High and GCC DoD will finally get the Stream icon in the Office 365 app launcher, or the waffle as we fondly call it. Now we're just waiting on the Whiteboard app to be listed there. It sounds like GCC High and GCC DoD are finally getting some love for core navigational experiences. Speaking of Whiteboard, I didn't make an icon for Whiteboard, so we're just going to pretend this is the Whiteboard icon here. GCC DoD is getting Microsoft Whiteboard. Hopefully the rollout is less chaotic than it was for GCC High. It was a mess. For those of you that did not watch those episodes when we got to talk about it, it was not great. Hopefully lessons learned. Microsoft Search, which apparently I also didn't make an icon for. Well, this is just going great. Coming this month to Microsoft Search, include attachments from Outlook in Search, or what they're now calling classic attachments. Gotta love the rebranding there. And the ability to support custom result types with modern display templates with adaptive cards in SharePoint, Office.com, and Bing, creating a more fluid, dynamic, and compelling experience in Microsoft Search. I did make an icon for this one. Admin, coming this month for admins. A new report for admins that shows how Visio is being used in your tenant, something that I've always wondered. Experience Insights, which will give admins, I'm quoting here, consistent data across usage, feedback, net promoter score, and help articles consumption, end quote, to give you a better idea of where your people are having trouble in Microsoft 365 so you can provide training or otherwise respond. Jumping over to Compliance and Purview, coming this month for compliance, the ability to set a default sensitivity label for SharePoint document libraries so the label gets applied to uploaded files in that library. This has been in preview since July, and we hope that's been plenty of time to test it. And lastly, in Compliance and Purview, Office for the Web will begin respecting Purview encryption settings that limit users' ability to copy content to the clipboard. Interesting. And lastly, to bring us on home, we don't normally cover Windows, but we thought these were interesting. Windows 365 will soon allow disk snapshot for analysis and legal discovery. And lastly, GCC High and GCC DoD will include Windows 365 as a service offering, bringing cloud operating systems to the people who serve our country.
That was the news.
All righty, thanks, Sean. Very nice job.
Thank you very much. Now to voice, I appreciate you putting the script together, and thanks for not slipping in any mean jokes.
I was being nice today. I didn't have time.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Anything stood out to you this week for last month?
You know, I think over the last month, we've seen Microsoft kind of clearing the pipes in terms of the outstanding announcements, a lot of shuffling of deck chairs with respect to kind of like marketing and positioning. And it's clear that there's some narrative building happening here in the run up to Ignite, which is in, I think, like 2 weeks or a week and a half from now.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that stood out to me most was how heavily they're beating the Viva drum. Did you notice that while you were out drinking beer?
Absolutely. So those things, got all over my Twitter feed while I was out and enjoying myself. And all I can think of is all the updates I talked about were all things built into already existing tool sets, right? This stuff is all stuff that's in Yammer, or it's in Teams, or it's in SharePoint, or SharePoint syntax. And it's like, I know they're never going to stop making Viva happen, but every single time it's just another thing, and they're trying to like, it's umbrellas on umbrellas, and I don't get it.
You know, I was thinking about this the other day because I agree with you. Yeah, obviously, like we've made this joke from the beginning that Viva just continues to be a rebundling and a repackaging of existent stuff. But particularly when you see like Yammer and SharePoint and these products that have always just kind of been value adds of being a Microsoft subscription holder or whatever, they were in a corner. There was no way for them to find new ways of charging money for things they already built, or for like new feature enhancements of SharePoint. Like if SharePoint got a new feature, it had to be out of the box. It had to be part of your existing agreement. And so Viva was their way of saying, this is how we can start to charge for things that we weren't allowed to charge for before. We've given it a new name, but it's all the same stuff. And it's wild. Now, they posted a news post a little over a week ago, and we'll drop it into the show notes here. It's titled "Empower and Energize Employees with Microsoft Viva." It's written by Seth Patton, who's the general manager. And I don't know, I know we both read it. Did you notice how many times they like double and triple dipped on like things that they had announced? Not just rebundling and repackaging, but now they're just kind of borrowing announcements from other things and holding them up as like the Viva version of them. Did you notice that?
Yeah, and it wasn't just like that overarching post. It was the individual posts on each of the Viva modules, I guess that's the term for it, where there were even the same YouTube videos or topics being covered in different posts, which I get it, because you want to look at it from like, okay, from the Viva Engage perspective, here's everything related to that. And it was almost like this was a perfect use case for Loop, because these paragraphs and these YouTube videos and other resources they had in there were being brought up almost word for word in other posts that were okay, in Viva Topics we did this, and there's even a post directly for people in Microsoft Viva Connections, answers in Microsoft Viva Connections, and like clearly answers is built on top of Yammer, and so that was brought into the Engage side, but it was also brought into Connections. So they're covering answers from 3 different entry points. And I realize you may have owners or administrators or whatever you want to call the functional owners, I guess, that are like not the IT people, because that's who you're selling this whole Viva brand to. Right. And so you need to kind of cover it contextually. But it was kind of funny. I was watching one video, our buddy Mike Holste, who's on the Yammer product marketing team. And then I see his face all over these other pages. And it's like, oh, it's the same video, because he's doing the same update, because answers matters to all of these different things. But if you're somebody who oversees all of this stuff, now you're reading the same stuff 2, 3, 4 times, which is kind of annoying from our perspective, Well,
it's also annoying through the sense of like, let's just assume for a moment that I have no idea what Viva is. I'm coming in with fresh eyes and I'm like, ooh, is this something worth investing in? Which of these pillars do I throw money at? And I check out, Viva Goals, and then I check out Viva Pulse, and then I check out Viva Learning, and I'm seeing kind of the Venn diagram overlap, and I'm ultimately coming away with which one actually gets me. Like, if I buy one, does that mean that buying others is a waste of money? Like, am I getting anything of actual tangible value beyond what I'm getting with, Viva Insights?
Yeah.
And so that ambiguity is going to get more and more difficult to manage. And it would make sense if Viva was just one licensing schema, but it's not.
Yep.
Viva is this like steady sync drip of $5 per user per month, $5 per user per month, $5 per user per month.
And I mean, it is, but it's also not, because only a few of them actually cost extra, right? Like Connections is free
now,
and Engage is free, right? Like, it's really only Viva Topics, which is only SharePoint syntax, but wrapped in a Teams wrapper, and Learning, which that is the only one that's really brand new, but that could have very well been a learning portal rolled out in the O365, hub, right? Like, or it could have been part of SharePoint. It's a web experience, right? So why wouldn't it be SharePoint? I don't know. So they were going to charge you for that anyway. It's just either they are putting lipstick on a pig to like justify it, or give it a
Right.
better name that's not like Syntex definitely sounds like a techie term, right? So if you want to
Right.
get that across to the knowledge management community out there who may not be techie, although they should be somewhat in theory, then they need to have, they want to have that sort of way to sell it, to talk about it or whatever. But Viva Topics isn't just SharePoint Syntex. It's also People Cards, which is AAD. It's also, SharePoint details or, Delve stuff. Like it's not just that. And, that stuff was already there. And
Right. So they announced just two new Viva modules. Of course, that's in addition to Viva Goals, which they re-announced a couple months ago, and Viva, I think, Sales, which they had announced a couple weeks before that. Viva Pulse and Viva Amplify. So what does that bring us to? 12, 14, 70?
No idea. People keep asking me to update the periodic table with Viva on it, and like I want to, but I don't know how to boil it down and make it so that it wouldn't need to scroll, and there's just so many of them and it's only going to get bigger. There's not even an easy way to explain it.
Here's my theory is somebody at some really high upper echelon of Microsoft was like, hey, we have this, employee experience platform, Viva, and we need a good name for, the whole thing, Viva something. Can you give me a list of names? And somebody, some intern, some, marketing associate says, here's a list of 30 names that I love. And that some wires got crossed somewhere and somebody was like, they want us to make 30 products. Okay. And they're just running like,
yeah. I mean, there are clearly professionals someplace doing all this, but I would just love to hear the justification. And even the people that I interact with that work at Microsoft or on the marketing side, like they seem to be all in on Viva, but that's publicly. And I'd love to go, like, going to the conference in Vegas in December, maybe get a couple of them in a bar and, serve them just one enough drinks to get a clear answer out of like, where did this come from? But yeah. So you mentioned
that was
no, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that was our strategy back in ye olden times of pre-COVID.
Yeah, right.
We would just, break into a party somewhere and be like, what is happening?
Right. Tell me the truth here, will you? So you mentioned a couple new modules. There's also the answers in Microsoft Viva, which I don't know if that's considered a module so much as it is a service. And then people in Microsoft Viva, which is going to let you basically use the org chart and the people listing in Teams and provide more filter and search options to find people. And it could be based on like what their topics are, their locations, the goals they have in Viva Goals, even like whether or not they work on, remotely or on site. That hasn't rolled out, and I don't think they have a due date for it yet. Answers is basically a Reddit-like posting, upvote, and response experience, for Q&A forums. I'll tell you, we use Teams for Q&A with a couple of my organizations, and it's not great. It does the job, but it's not amazing. So sure. That's nice, and that's good for
that's the Teams experience for you,
right? But Answers is good for knowledge management and whatnot, and you can see people based on what their skill sets are, and the more answers they provide, the higher score they get in badges and the whole 9 yards. But yeah, there wasn't like the updates were essentially for like Engage and the Yammer stuff. So Connections dipped on the Yammer updates, Engage dipped on the Yammer stuff because it's literally just Yammer in Teams. So the story feed, we're kind of talking about the potential cringe of having TikToks or Instagram stories at a corporate level. Oh.
Yeah, it's Satya in the elevator in Redmond, holding it up and be like, "What's up, everybody? How we doing? I'm here in the office getting my coffee."
Yep.
I refuse to believe because and I all due respect to every executive that I've worked with, but most of them are a little too self-serious for that. And I don't think I want that anyways. Like, what value is that? If somebody was to tell me within Microsoft that this was an attempt to bridge the divide of kind of the humanity that we've lost in working from home and not being in the office and not having that kind of quirky, meet cute kind of stuff that happens in the office, I would understand it. This just doesn't feel like it because nobody's going to use it. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am.
Yeah. And then you're going to have the issue of people using it inappropriately and incorrectly. Right. So,
Right.
That's always been one of the bigger issues I've run into with upper management at places that I've worked for or consulted at, where, Yammer and the old SharePoint newsfeed or even Teams with a large number of people, somebody says or does something that they shouldn't have. How do you deal with that? And what's the corporate policy for removing somebody's comment? Is that against, their rights of speech at work? What is legal?
Right.
And if you don't have somebody managing this stuff, then you're going to run into problems, because it's going to be all ad hoc and one-off responses, which are not consistent, and people can't necessarily trust what they are going to do with it. So I don't know.
Moderation is a really good point, because I think ultimately, text, a post in like the general channel of the all staff Teams team is relatively easy to go like, oh, that shouldn't be there, delete. But moderation with like video that's a whole can of worms right there. Is somebody's whole thing going to be just like to watch these things come through? I mean, I'm not anticipating a flood. But
I'm actually curious if they have a report option like you would have on YouTube. You can report a video. I feel like that probably is necessary. If they didn't provide it,
I would think so, but they don't have that for posts.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe that's the impetus to implement something like that. But then again, that might be stepping on some third-party developers' toes.
Yeah, don't know. So that kind of brings into the discussion Ignite. So Ignite is going to be next week, the 12th to the 14th, if I'm not mistaken. And we are excited to see what gets announced, especially considering, all of that Viva stuff came out on the 22nd of September, which is 20 days about-ish before Ignite. So that's a lot of stuff coming out, or some of it was double dipped. The storyline stuff was definitely a triple dip. But, new stuff I'm sure is going to be coming out. I look forward to a lot of news on Microsoft Loop, frankly, because I think it's now is the time to hear more about it. But I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do. And if they do, to your point, sort of wrap that up even more with a bow and bring things more consistently or understandably in a place that makes more sense than it does currently. But I won't hold back.
So next week, we're going to take that opportunity to talk about kind of what our predictions are for Ignite. We're going to talk about where we think they're headed, and we'll kind of match that up against the video that we'll record roughly around Ignite as well. For those of you watching, both now and as we get closer to it, drop in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think is coming down the pipeline at Ignite. Because I think it's anybody's guess. We're in an interesting point in the world of Microsoft. Like Viva and ultimately Teams has kind of become this giant 800-pound, 800-ton elephant in the room. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of how they can delineate between what we might have considered previously core Microsoft, SharePoint, Microsoft Office, Windows, blah, 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 and Viva and Teams, which have ultimately become the vehicle for all new stuff. All these things that we're seeing in Viva would have been either separate products previously or would have been, packaged into the SharePoint/Office web experience. It'll be interesting to see if that's the trend that continues, or if they start to find a balance for organizations like mine who don't use Teams. Like, are we just watching? From our perspective, Microsoft is stagnated because, we're not using, granted, we're not using the big shiny tool that they want us to throw money at. But is that Microsoft's position going forward, which is that we are a Teams first product. And if you don't buy that, you're just buying auxiliary stuff that will, throw you a bone every now and again.
I feel like they would tell you that right now, honestly. Yeah, they are Teams first.
I think you're probably right. The productivity OS should have been the giveaway.
Work OS, right? Like that's what I feel like it's at. But there was one other thing from the news that I wanted to bring up. So the new default sensitivity label for a library and being able to apply that to all of the files within a library, I thought was interesting. So if you don't know how sensitivity labels work for files and in SharePoint sites, if you do set up sensitivity labels, these are Microsoft information protection settings inside of now called Microsoft Purview. You can apply labels to sites, but those labels and sites do not affect anything in the site. It's basically it literally is just a label, right? So if you happen to want to use like any sort of markings or something like that in a file or encrypt it, the site labels won't do that. So that means all the files in your teams and your sites have to be individually labeled. And there's only a certain number of file types that are supported. But this new feature is basically letting you have a library level label, and when you create the library, it has a checkbox or a dropdown to choose which of your sensitivity labels you want to apply. All well and good, except it only works on Office and PDF files. The sensitivity labels can apply to a lot more file types, although notably, like I think TXT files can't get them. There's a number that will not support it. And outside of the Office files, and that includes OneNote. OneNote's not supported because it's basically just like a URL pointer these days because of the whole OneNote debacle. You have to sync the files down using OneDrive and then use the AIP client on Windows to label any non-Office files. Now, this new default option might be nice because it can apply to PDFs. So says the deliverable, but actually figuring out what's labeled and what's not, it can be difficult. You have to open up the file. Well, in a library, there is actually a column where you can click add column, show hide columns. One of them is called sensitivity. But for whatever reason, it only shows the sensitivity of Office files. So even if you have labeled a file type that is supported, it will not display in that column what its label is. So all of this is to say, the whole labeling thing is kind of a mess, in my opinion. And they chose to make it kind of more of a mess because now if your concern is that you don't want people to rely on a lazy automated application of a label, you need to explicitly not choose a default label type in a library, which I feel is going to cause a lot of files to get mislabeled.
Sure. Yeah. And, I think in my history of like training and user engagement, I find that getting people to grok this idea that you can customize the library experience as the separate object doesn't necessarily resonate. Like it's not an obvious thing. Because you got to either know you to go into site contents and then you can see all the different libraries and then you can go into the settings for those specific objects, or you have to be specifically in the library and click on the gear and click library settings from there. So I hope that they can polish that experience up, because right now I think that obviously it has to be really intentional, and Purview is not for the faint of heart, but
true. I would have much preferred the engineering effort was put on making that column accurate and potentially making it easier to apply labels, maybe like right in the library itself. Like one of the flyouts was, label, and you can't do that. In Office, you have to open the file and then choose it from the web app or from the desktop app, whatever, which isn't awful, but it's annoying. But for no other file types can you do that at all without having to sync it and then one-off every single individual file, right-click, protect and classify, or whatever it is, do it through the AIP client, which is still known as the AIP client, by the way. It's not even known as the MIP client or the Purview client. It's the Azure Information Protection Client, which is now like 3 brands ago.
Right.
And it's just one of those, and it turns out my real underlying complaint about this was that I didn't know this was coming. It popped up in one of my customers, and it doesn't work. So that was my underlying complaint, was why isn't this working if you upload? And I looked at the documentation, whatever. So the check or the drop down is there. Whether or not it works or not is a different story. And it's like, rollouts are just the worst. So
yeah. Well, it's, especially with something I'm not going to say niches and nobody's using it, but niches and it doesn't get a ton of media attention. Those are not the rollouts that they pull back and go, right, this wasn't fully baked. They're just going to kind of jam this through.
Yeah. And I apologize for all the silent drama that just happened. I brought home a great cold from Denmark. I really appreciate the Danes for their donation of just a very good hacky cough that I've got. 4 days of testing has shown it's not COVID, but
knocking on wood.
Yes, exactly. So, all right, cool beans. So I think that about does it. So thank you so much to everybody for watching. As always, a like and subscribe is much appreciated. Leave that comment below. Ask questions. Throw in your suggestions on what you think is going to happen at Ignite next week. Sean, thanks so much for joining me this week, and I can't wait to hang out with you and everybody else again next week.